So what if I told you that the largest bank in the 17th largest country with a $1 trillion GDP is quietly adopting Bitcoin? Well, that's exactly what's happened. And not only is this bank a giant, but we're talking about a country where nearly half of the people in Turkey own crypto. So of course we are talking about Turkey, and I think Turkey is a fascinating case study for a number of reasons. Let's not forget their president met with the Bitcoin president, Bukele, all the way back in 2022. So today I want to really talk about what is going on in Turkey and whether this news regarding their $86 billion bank, potentially talking about Bitcoin, whether there could be something going on in the country that we need to be paying closer attention to. So let's dive straight into what exactly is going on. Now, this is the bank in question. They are called Garanti BBVA. So by Wikipedia, we can see that this bank is the second largest bank in Turkey with $220 billion in assets. The other article we're going to be looking at today calls it the fifth largest bank in Turkey. So there's a little bit of disagreement here, but one thing that is not in question is the fact that BBVA is preparing to offer crypto trading services to all of its clients. Okay, now this is interesting because they are subject to some MiCA regulations, as we can see by this little section of the article I've highlighted. These MiCA regulations are being enforced all across the European Union, but this bank has got approval. We can see they've partnered with a Spanish exchange, which is fascinating because, you know, technically Turkey's just kind of sitting on the border there between, you know, between Europe, between Asia. Nobody really knows what's going on, but they are following and they are abiding by a lot of these European laws, which a lot of other countries have struggled to deal with. So that's the bank, BBVA. And we think that they could potentially be giving Turkish citizens an escape from this chart right here. So this is a chart of the inflation rate in Turkey. I'm going to zoom this all the way up so you guys can see just how dramatic this chart is. It is crazy. It is absolutely insane what has actually happened to inflation in Turkey, you know, since 2022. This is kind of when that inflation spike really started in Turkey. The inflation spiral kind of hit these countries with a lot of US dollar denominated debt in 2021 and 2022, when the dollar went on this big bull run. This is when countries like Argentina, Turkey, Pakistan, they all saw massive spikes of inflation where at their worst, inflation was above 100% year on year. That means the price of goods and services that you're trying to buy is doubling every single year. And in Argentina, it was even more crazy. In Argentina, we saw inflation rates of 250%. Okay, so we can see here that is what the Turkish citizens are dealing with, and this is why we're seeing so much adoption of Bitcoin in Turkey. We can see by this article, half of people in Turkey adopt Bitcoin. No, I did not stutter. I did not make a mistake. Half of people in Turkey own Bitcoin. We can see 85 million people is the population in Turkey. And it's pretty crazy because it looks as if adoption is accelerating. The time that this report was actually done was, believe it or not, in the middle of the bear market. No, that's right. This was in 2022. This was a report done in the bear market in the 2022-2023 era. We can see massive 12% increase in Turkey Bitcoin investors over the past year alone. And I'm fascinated because this adoption wave actually happened in the bear market. Now, the reason why we saw the adoption in the bear market was because of the chart I just showed you guys of the inflation crisis. Now, again, there's a quote Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Well, actually, it's the other way around. But the quote goes that if you fall for a lie once, okay, that's fine. Sometimes people lie. Sometimes you make mistakes. But again, if the same person lies to you again, well, it's your fault if you believe that lie the second time and if you give them forgiveness again. And it's the same thing with governmental inflation, because we can see here in Turkey, I have a chart on screen that's showing you guys the Turkish citizens have dealt with major inflation crises on multiple different occasions. We can see the most recent peak in inflation. It was something that the Turkish citizens have seen multiple times before. We can see back in the 1980s, they saw inflation of 132% year over year, which is crazy. We saw something similar in 1995. The inflation crisis peaked at 130%. But again, look at inflation between the years 1977 and 2002. For nearly 25 years, inflation did not get underneath 25%. Every single year, inflation was above 25% for a 25-year period. So again, this most recent inflation spike we saw in Turkey, it would have woke the citizens up a little bit. And this is why we saw a 2022-2023 report come out of KuCoin suggests that 50% of Turkish adults are investing in Bitcoin. So we can see here, this is the report from KuCoin that surveyed something like 15,000 Turkish citizens. And they have huge adoption levels, very, very high adoption levels. Let's grab a quote from that article. We can see that they are actually, I want to read the most important part of this because it's a fascinating one. Okay. And it's because where is the adoption coming from? It's coming from the young guys. That's what I think is interesting. Younger generations are prominent, with investors between the ages of 31 to 44 making up 48% of the adoption. So it's people in their 30s, it's people in their early 40s. We can also see people aged between 18 and 30 make up 30% of the overall adoption. So it is the next generation of people saying enough is enough. And that's why I think it's fascinating that the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, has been spotted with Bukele. Now, again, let's look at the date that this photo was snapped. January 24th, 2022. Wasn't that 3 months after El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender? And this was happening at the exact same time that Turkey was dealing with the insane inflation crisis. This was peaking. Inflation was peaking at 200% in 2022. Do you really think President Erdogan from Turkey, the country of well over 80 million people, went to go meet with Bitcoin president 3 months after Bitcoin was made legal tender? And do you think they weren't talking about inflation or Bitcoin? I don't know, but I think that's a little bit of a red flag or a warning sign that shows that maybe the news that's happened this week was news that has been slowly but surely bubbling under the surface, or let's just call it inevitable to happen in Turkey. And maybe this bank, BBVA, the second largest bank in Turkey, or the largest bank depending upon how you measure it, has been quietly, let's say, moving in this direction for a little bit of time now. Turkey very, very clearly is a country ripe for adoption, very ripe for adoption, mind you. And they have been kind of passing some contradictory rules in the same week that this news of one of their largest banks also came out. So it looks as if the country, Turkey, is trying to get their ducks in a row right now as we speak, because Turkey has also introduced stricter crypto AML regulations. And again, look at the date of that article. December 25th, 2024. Christmas Day. What is Turkey doing? Signing pieces of law into law on Christmas Day. Aren't our beloved politicians supposed to be enjoying themselves over the Christmas break? I'll let you guys read into that headline and the date that that headline was passed. I won't draw any conclusions from it. All I will say is I think it's pretty interesting timing, especially considering what the price of Bitcoin looks like in the Turkish lira. I want to try to show you guys a chart of the growth of Bitcoin in the Turkish lira. But again, I think it's pretty clear, considering we're seeing so much growth in Bitcoin adoption in Turkey, a country with, let's not beat around the bush, an enormous population. I mean, 85 million people, it's massive. Now, this is a pretty wild chart. I've found for you guys the price of Bitcoin in Turkish liras. It looks even more bananas than the price in US dollars. Again, remember when we had this consolidation period earlier in the year? Bitcoin was struggling to breach its all-time highs in US dollars. But in Turkish liras, look at this. This was consolidating well and truly above all-time highs. Just goes to show how weak the currency is of the Turkish lira. And this does help to explain why we see literally half of people in Turkey, based upon this survey, adopting Bitcoin. Yes, no surveys are perfect. We understand that. Yes, some surveys are open to bias, but this one that was done in Turkey did have a pretty big sample size, tens of thousands of people. It was one of the biggest surveys that we've seen. It's pretty clear in my eyes that Turkey is adopting Bitcoin in a pretty big way. And again, if you haven't adopted Bitcoin yet, we'd encourage you guys, please study Bitcoin. Spend 10 hours studying it. Bitcoin is a very interesting thing, and I haven't met anyone who spent more than 10 hours studying Bitcoin who's not at least interested in it. Dip your toes in the water, buy a little bit of Bitcoin today. If you are looking to buy a little bit of Bitcoin, or if you want some free Bitcoin, we'd like to let you guys know about our show partners, and that is, of course, Rhino Bitcoin. They're a great Bitcoin-only application. As you guys can see, we think they've got some of the slickest user interfaces in the entire space. Very simple, very easy to use. You can buy Bitcoin on Rhino. You can send Bitcoin on Rhino. You can use the Lightning Network to send Bitcoin anywhere around the world instantly, nearly for free, using the Rhino application. And you guys can even get $10 of free Bitcoin with Rhino if you sign up using a promo code Bitcoin News. Now that's one word, and you can copy and paste it from the description down below, where you will also find the link to Rhino Bitcoin. So again, if you're in Turkey, even anywhere around the world, check out what Rhino Bitcoin is doing and really start to spend the time researching Bitcoin today. Okay, we are seeing massive news headlines nearly on a daily basis now of enormous banks FOMOing into Bitcoin. Again, Wikipedia says that Garanti, BBVA Bank, is just casually squatting on 220 billion lira worth of assets. They're not a joke. They're not a small bank. They're an enormous bank. And now all of their clients are going to be able to buy Bitcoin in the pretty near future. So with all that said, guys, it's a little bit of a late rip. It's 8 o'clock where I am right now. If you enjoyed this one, as All Night Hider says, a bruising of the like buttons down below would be greatly appreciated. We're told that's good for the algo. It tells them what's up and hopefully pushes this Bitcoin-only content in front of the eyes of more people. And with all that said, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your night. I agree with our commenter from Twitter. Bitcoin doesn't need countries. Countries need Bitcoin. What a beautiful note to end tonight's stream on. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Thank you, All Night Hider. And thank you, All Night Hider, for moderating the chat. Look at that. He's even put a link to Rhino Bitcoin in the live chat for you guys. Couldn't be easier to get yourself $10 of free Bitcoin. I didn't realize Turkey was at free. That's what Mr. B is saying in the chat. We might need another whole live stream to break down just how free Turkey is, but we're going to save that for another one. Well, that's it, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.